Well, good day, folks. This is David Gordon, and this is actually a continuation of the seminar that we held down in Mansfield, Mass, in which I was too ill to continue. So I thank you for your patience in me getting this out to you, and I'd like to talk about energy today, and that's the part of the presentation that I didn't get a chance to do. And energy is something I've had an awful lot of passion for in the last few years, and I think it's a philosophy built on necessity, because we come from a very, very cold part of Maine, the northern part of Maine, and I think most people don't realize how cold it actually is up there. And on the slide you see in front of you now, on January 16th, 2009, one of the secretaries in the office actually took a picture of her thermometer on that day, which was just exactly 50 below zero. So you can see something we always strive to do in northern Maine is to stay warm. So I think part of the reason that I enjoy the energy part so much is that everybody wants to stay warm, and that's not really an exaggeration. But for you folks, why is energy efficiency important? Obviously not for some of the same reasons as me, but controlling your cost. That's always the big deal when it comes to anything with your home, is what does it cost? And it's so easy to make your home very energy efficient today versus probably in past times. There is absolutely no reason not to do it, and that'll keep your costs down for the future. Now, something else that will definitely be important to some of you, as it is with me, is comfort. No one wants to sit near their windows or their doors or a light switch or a receptacle and feel a draft all the time. So comfort is also very, very important. A couple of things that you may not really think about that much. It's also important to meet codes, and we'll talk about that in depth as we go on. But meeting the codes will be different for different areas, but it's very important that you do, otherwise you will not be able to get that occupation permit. Something else that maybe has not crossed your mind is the resale value of your home. Banks are getting smarter and smarter now, and they used to ask for just a copy of your taxes and your insurance costs. But today they're also asking to see the cost of your energy bills when you go to resell your home or even for a second mortgage. So resale value is also very, very important. Now, what are some of the things that we can do to make sure that our home is energy efficient? And the very first one really doesn't have anything to do with your home at all, but it's got everything to do with where you're going to build. Now, if you've already picked out your land, then this will not apply to you. But for those of you that have not, I would strongly recommend that you take a map of the area where you're going to be working, going to school, shopping, all of your daily activities, and plot them on a map. And along with that, draw in the area that you want to purchase, if you haven't purchased your land, where you'd like to purchase the land. And obviously, this will probably be a fairly large area. And you can start with the nearest area that you do all of your daily activities and work outward. That way, that will help control your commuting and your transportation costs and not break your family energy budget. Now, the solutions to your home to making that very energy efficient are many and varied, and then most of them are very, very simple. In these first few slides, I call Working with the Mother Nature series, because what they have to do with is taking advantage of what Mother Nature offers us. And she offers us so many ways to help us save energy. If we just pay attention to her, she can do a great job, really and truly. That may sound like a little far-fetched, but it's really very simple. And the first thing we can do is, let's take one long side of our home, as you can see in the slide here, and point it true south. That way, when we have all that winter sun, all that passive solar energy coming in, we'll be able to take advantage of all of that solar energy with the sun coming in, because obviously that's when the warmest part of the day is, that's when the sun obviously is in the south. So we want to capture all that solar energy by pointing one long side of our home true south if we possibly can. And when I say true south, I mean on a magnetic compass, you probably know that points magnetic south, not true, magnetic north, not true north, and the opposite end of the needle is south. So I have to deviate a little bit from that, and that's called declination, but that's easy to figure out, usually just a few degrees. But let's point that home true south. And also, if you ever think that you're going to put solar collectors on your roof, and I hope many of you are considering that, because as technology grows and changes with solar energy, it's becoming so inexpensive to do it, it's almost a no-brainer not to. But if you are going to consider putting solar panels on your roof, any type of solar panels, whether they be electrical producing photovoltaics or hot water like on my own home, then you want them pointed true south to get the maximum benefit. And if you are going to consider putting them on, I hope you tell us, because we've got something called a solar ready design that if you tell us which one of your roofs points south, we can design a chase or a pathway, if you will, that takes those pipes or wires directly from the roof, through the roof, and into the area, into your utility room or your basement or wherever it's appropriate in your house for them to go. In my own home, now, of course, I put my solar collectors on in my house back in the 80s, and I've got these ugly pipes that run horizontally across the roof and then down the walls and into the basement. They're ugly, they're inefficient, and they require more maintenance. So we don't want to do that. So we're happy to design that for you, and that solar ready option is absolutely no charge. Something else that we need to consider on our home, again, very simple, very easy, and still working with Mother Nature, is the roof overhang. Because what she does to help us is in the summertime, the sun is very high in the sky. And in the wintertime, it is much lower in the sky. So with just a normal 2-foot overhang, which is what their standard overhang is on our homes, it will block out almost all of the summer sun. We're letting in almost all of the winter sun, which is exactly what we need to do. We don't want that overheating, obviously, in the summer. And you can see by the slide on the right-hand side what the difference is in the height of the sun from July to December. And it is very dramatic and easy to take advantage of. Something else that is easy to do and hope you consider is a natural lighting. If you think about what rooms you're going to be in your home when you're awake in the daylight hours, generally those rooms are your kitchen and your living room. So if that's where the natural light is during the day, why not put those on the south side of your home? Again, with a little bit of design, it's pretty easy to do. It doesn't cost any more to put them there than it is in the north or the west side anyplace else. And you will get all that daytime light. Now, almost all of us have walked into someone's home, and even in the kitchen or the living room during the day, the first thing they had to do when they walked in was turn the light on because it's so dark. There's just really no need of doing that, and it's going to expend a lot of electrical energy to turn those lights on all day long. So let's put them on the south side. And also, you'll find it's a natural pick-me-up to have all that natural light in your home all the time when you're there, because it's psychological. It feels much better when you walk into a nice bright room versus a dark room. And for myself and my wife, we like to have that sun beaming in the morning, so we put our bedroom on the east side. So as soon as the sun pops up, it comes in our bedroom, and that's a nice way to wake up in the morning having the sun come in there. So a couple really easy things you can do with just natural lighting just by designing your home the proper way. Something else that's easy to do, but may take a little teeny bit of thought, are shade trees and windbreaks. Now we talked about the south side sun and how Mother Nature helps us with the angle by blocking it in the summertime and letting it in the wintertime. That's not the same way on the east side of our home and the west side of our home. Obviously the sun is rising in the east and setting in the west, and if we're not careful, we can get some nasty overheating in the summertime by not blocking those sun rays out. So one of the easy solutions, again, that Mother Nature gives us, are some shade trees. In fact, I'd go a couple steps further and say I'd recommend deciduous trees, leaf-bearing trees, that are dwarf or semi-dwarf fruit trees. And the reason that I say that is, of course, with the deciduous trees, when it gets warm in the spring, the trees leave out. Cool in the fall, and you want to let that sun back in, the leaves fall off. And the reason I like to have deciduous, dwarf or semi-dwarf fruit trees is because with the fruit trees, you can always shear them. You're always pruning your fruit trees to the proper size anyway. So if you want to let a little bit more sun in, prune a little bit more off. If you want to let a little bit less sun in, then let them grow for a couple of years. But you don't want to put elm trees or birches or maples, any big trees out there in the east and west side, because otherwise, eventually the trunk of the tree or the stem of the tree will block out most of your sun. Excuse me. So simple, easy to do, but a little bit of thought maybe into it, but it works very, very well. It works in my own home, and it works very, very well. And the other added benefit is you have fruit in the fall, so it works really nice. Something else that you may want to consider are windbreaks, and you can see in the right slide over there, this person has a windbreak on his north and his west side. And the reason we do that is because that's where the prevailing wind is. And you think, well, why is a windbreak going to help me? And it's all about wind pressure on your home. And the more pressure you have in your home, especially in the wintertime, the more air infiltration you're going to get. Because you're going to get stronger winds in the wintertime than you are the summer, because there's less ground friction in wintertime because there's less leaves. So if you can put some windbreaks up there, it'll take a lot of the pressure off your home, obviously less infiltration, make it easier to heat, and also more comfortable to be outside in the late fall when it's cold. You don't have that wind pushing on yourself. Whether you're out there raking leaves or whatever you're doing in the fall and the winter, it is more comfortable. And if you live in a high elevation area or up north, in the northern latitude, you may want to consider that one of those hedges be parallel to your driveway, which this one is here in that slide. Again, I also have it in my own home. And if you can keep that hedge somewhere from 75 feet to 125 feet parallel and from your driveway, it will also act as a snow fence. So when you get a driving snowstorm in the wintertime, as the snow comes up over the top of that hedge, drops down the other side, loses its velocity, the drift will occur before your driveway and not in your driveway. And anyone in the high altitudes, again, the northern zones, realize that can be a very big deal. Because in my own home, before I planted my tree line, I was getting 3 and 4 foot drifts every time it snowed, because I'm up on a hill where of course I have a windmill. And so it was a serious problem until I put the hedge in and broke that snow from drifting into my driveway. And it's very simple and easy for you to do that also if you've got the room. Something else that we could talk about for a very long time are design elements in your home. There's literally hundreds of ways to design energy efficiency into your home. And we'll just talk about a few of the simple ones here. And the first thing I would consider doing is aligning my baths. If you have a bathroom on the first floor and one on the second floor, the easy thing to do and the most efficient thing to do is line them up. In fact, let's line them up on the north side of the home, because we don't need a lot of natural light in our bathrooms, and we have small windows there anyway. So let's put them on the north side of the home if we can, and line them up perfectly over each other, so we have a minimum amount of piping from our hot water heater. Because that's the big deal here, where we can save the amount of energy. Not only does it cost less to install those bathrooms, if you can use one vent pipe and minimum amounts of piping and venting and things, that when you turn that hot water faucet on, if you have to wait more than 4 or 5 seconds for hot water, you're leaving an awful lot of that hot water in the pipes when you shut that faucet off, of course, and that is just plain wasted energy. It may not seem like a lot in the short run, but over years you will save definitely hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, just by lining those bathrooms up and keeping that hot water heater very close, if not in, one of those bathrooms. Now, if you're thinking about having a second bath or a half bath at the other end of the house, talk to your plumbing or heating guy and contractor, and he can recommend maybe a Rinnai or some kind of an instant-on hot water heater that doesn't just sit there all day long in that fire bath, in that remote bath, heating hot water, because chances are it's only a half bath anyway, just for washing your hands or something. You don't need a big hot water heater, and those little small instant-on ones require no energy unless they're being used, and they're quite inexpensive to start with. So talk to your heating or plumbing contractor about that. That may be the least expensive way, energy-wise, to design that bath. And I hope with your main hot water heater, the reason I mentioned putting those main bathrooms on the north side, you have a kitchen on the south side, so that hot water heater will also be very close to your kitchen and make it as efficient as you possibly can. Something else for a design element that maybe you hadn't thought of as an energy saving feature is a 3-season room. Now, a 3-season room, by my definition, is basically you use it 3 seasons out of the year, kind of simple. And what I did in my own home was originally I had a deck on the north side of the home. And after we did the extreme makeover for ABC television, my wife loved the flooring in that. And so we said, well, how about if we close in our deck and make it a 3-season room, which we did. Obviously added roofs and windows and things. And again, that's on the north side of the home. And it came out nice, and it was pretty. And a couple of things that immediately happened, or almost immediately happened, that I hadn't thought about. First of all, because it is on the north side, and most of us up here in the northern latitudes do not have air conditioning, or at least central air conditioning, we found ourselves eating dinner out there in the evening because it was the only room in the house that didn't get any sun at all, so it was the coolest room in the house. So obviously in the summertime heat, it was a very comfortable place to eat dinner. And as soon as winter came along, it took me a while to realize why I was burning 6 or 7% less wood all the time. And it was because now that this room was enclosed, even though it wasn't heated, it was this giant cushion or this giant protector in the whole north side of the home. So the wind would beat against that wall, but it wasn't an exterior wall to the main home. So it cut our heating bill by probably about 7% with wood consumption. So a couple of design ideas there that maybe you hadn't crossed your mind, but really do make a significant difference. Now, when we talk about energy-saving solutions, oftentimes people think of these really high-tech things and how complicated they might be. But there are some things out there that even though they might look high-tech or seem high-tech, they are very simple. This Nest thermometer on the left side of this slide, our sons bought us one of these for Christmas 2 years ago. And I looked at that, and I'm not a real techie person, and they said, you can hook it up to your computer and run it the internet and on and on. And I said, well, I'm not even sure this is something that I'm going to like very much. But it only had 2 wires on it to hook it up. And just to pull out the old thermostat and plugged it in, and said, okay, I can do that. Well, immediately I found, and you can read up on these smart thermometers, especially this Nest one, this Nest, that they are very simple to run. You don't have to really do anything if you don't want to. But when you start turning it up during the day and turning it down during night, and especially on the weekends if you're gone or something like that, it starts to remember when to turn itself up and when to turn itself down. So if you forget about it or if you're gone away, you can either turn it down with your computer or it remembers to turn itself down at night if you've forgotten to. So it works really, really well. Very simple, not real expensive, works real well. On the right side of that slide, you see an electric hot water heater. And the only difference is it's got a red top. That red top has a heat pump on it. Well, a heat pump is just really a refrigerator working in reverse, where the refrigerator takes cool air, if you will, out of your kitchen and puts it into your refrigerator. This takes warm air out of your utility room or your basement and makes your water warmer. And very simple. It's a pretty simple thing. Obviously, the refrigeration part of it's been around for probably close to 100 years now. It's a simple technology. It works very well, but it can cut your heating bill if you have electric heat by up to 50%, which is pretty dramatic. I mean, the payback on this electric hot water heater with a heat pump is probably 2 or 3 years. So I hope you can, if you do have an area where they use electricity to heat your hot water, then the heat pump on top is a big plus. And the other big plus with that electric hot water heater with a heat pump is it pulls in moist air and sends out dry air. And so many of our utility rooms, especially in the summertime, end up being damp. So this is a nice dehumidifier. Even though it's not really designed to do that, that's exactly, in reality, what it does do. So it'll keep that utility room of yours or your basement a lot drier than it was before. Something else that we have to talk about when it comes to energy efficiency are windows and doors. Some of us think that glass is a good insulator. Glass is a very poor insulator. In fact, it's a great conductor. So when we're designing our home, placing windows in it, we need to be conscious and be aware, of where we're going to place our glass. Now, we've talked about that quite a bit in the past already, but on the north side, depending on your latitude, and if you're more into heating than you are cooling, you probably want to minimize the amount of glass on the north side and maximize it on the south side, like we've talked about. So obviously to gain the solar gain but not lose it at night. And how do you know if you're getting energy efficient windows and doors or not? The very easy thing to do now is look for the Energy Star seal. Up until a couple of 3 years ago, the Energy Star seal, it wasn't very restrictive to get a seal, so most companies got it. But the last 2 or 3 years, they've really tightened their requirements to get an Energy Star seal on windows and doors. And now they're probably in the top third of the country. The top third best windows and doors have the Energy Star seal, and it really does. It means something, and it makes a difference. So unless you want to get technical and do a lot of research on your different types of window, which you can from the National Fenestration Rating Council, again, the right side of that slide, and that they can tell you about almost every manufacturer, small and large, in the United States. And basically what it tells you is how good an insulator those windows are and how much air or how much draft there is in each one of those windows. I wish we were like Canada. They post that right on every sticker of every window and door. In the United States, we don't do that. But you can check it out with the National Fenestration Rating Council, and if it seems a little technical to you, ask your general contractor to do it, just so that you're confident that the windows that you're buying are very well insulated and will last you a long time with some energy savings. Now, we know that we have to insulate our homes and have to insulate them very well to make them energy efficient. But so often we miss the part about sealing them off. And we can have all the insulation in the world, but if we have a lot of air leaks, and oftentimes it can account for 30 to 50% of our heat loss, that insulation that we just put in and paid for can easily be wasted. So let's also think not just about insulating our home, but also sealing it. And sealing a home is all about attention to detail, and we're going to talk about that with your general contractor, but he needs to be attentive to details. It's not difficult. It just takes a little time, and then you can have a super tight home, and we'll talk about that in just a few more minutes, more in depth. Now, the number one way to prevent air leakage in your log home is buy dry logs. It's difficult to overemphasize that, because if the logs are dry and they move very little, then there's very little opportunity for air to get in there. But if the logs are not dry, then between every log, as it moves, there's potential for those logs to have air infiltration between them. And I've heard so much when I walk around the home shows out there and listen to other companies selling different species of logs and how they dry them and that type of thing. I've heard so many stories about, well, it's okay to have green logs, or they're only dried down, they're kiln dried down to 19%, or whatever the case may be. I said, man, some of that is just so far off that sometimes it's good to have a third-party verification. So that's why I put this Energy Savers slide up here, which comes from the United States Department of Agriculture, of Energy, and below it says energysavers.gov. And if you Google energysavers.gov, you can bring up this slide and many more pertaining to log homes. But this one in particular talks about minimizing air leakage in log homes, which is what we're talking about. And it tells you basically that drier logs are better. And then it says, probably the most important part to me, and it says, and the best woods to use to avoid the problem in order of effectiveness, and cedar is number one. Obviously, that's one of the many reasons that we use cedar. It is the best wood for log homes, period. And this is one of the many slides that backs that up. And we've already talked about some of the advantages of cedar earlier in the presentation. But this one here, I think it's good to see that the federal government backs that up, just so you folks know that you're getting the true story on this. We talked about the moisture content should be about 12% or less. Our 3-year running average at the mill is 11.92 moisture percent. and that is an average. Some logs will be more, some logs will be less, but the average is right around 11.9%, and that's what we call equilibrium level. And that means that the logs are pretty well done shrinking, but if it gets a lot of moisture out there, they're not going to swell too much either. It's equilibrium where there's not a lot of shrinking or swelling going on, and that is about the ideal moisture content for this area of the United States. Now, if you were in the Southwest, the ideal moisture content would be around 10%, so we'd dry those more if they were going to Arizona or someplace like that. But the Northeast and the East especially, 12% works very, very well. Now, we've talked a little bit about insulation, but how much is the proper amount to use is always a question. In the IECC Codes, the International Energy Conservation Council, from the federal government, indicates that these are the minimum requirements for the wall in your area. Now, you can see that we're in that purple zone in northern Maine, so we're zone 7. You folks probably, most of you are going to be in 4, 5, or 6, and in the Mansfield area, probably zones 5 or zone 6. So that means you want a minimum R factor of 17 or 19 in your wall. And I emphasize this is the minimum factor because these are the 2009 energy codes. And as the years go on, just like miles per gallon in your car, there will be higher requirements. So I hope you consider going a little bit more than the 17 or the 19. 21 or 23 would work very well, and I think that'll be where it'll be in the future. So I hope you consider that. It's so inexpensive to add a little more insulation now than it is to try to add it later. It just costs really just a few hundred or very few $1,000s to add that little bit of insulation, and I hope you do. And this is the minimum requirement, I said, that the federal government has. Now, just to let you know, your area may or may not require this amount, and the only way to know for sure what's required by the state level in your area is talk to your local code enforcement officer. But again, remember about resale and everything else, and it's so cheap to add insulation now versus later, and it's so easy to do. With the energy envelope system that we have, you start out with that full log on the exterior, and you just add enough on the inside to meet your energy codes and whatever your personal requirements may be. We're currently building one in southern Maine right now. It has 6 inches of insulation in the wall and 8 or 9 inches in the roof, and it would be close to a zero energy or a passive home, which means he'll require little, if any, outside energy to heat and cool his home because of the massive amount of insulation and the collectors he has on the roof. It'd be pretty much energy free from outside his home, and that's easier and easier to do. So if you want to keep your energy bills down when you're building it, that's the time to do it. Now, if you only take one thing out of this presentation today, this single slide is the most important slide. It's the most important concept really of the day, and that's choosing a general contractor. Now, to have an energy efficient home like we talked about, you need attention to detail, and it's your general contractor who's going to be the one that's attending to that detail, and you need to choose the right one. And yes, it's good to listen to other people who recommend and say, you know, this guy's good or that guy's good, but when it gets down to it, you're the one that needs to make that decision. And to me, the best and the proper way to make that decision is do it on your own. You do your own research. It's simple, it's easy to do. After you've narrowed it to a couple, then you ask them for references. And you ask them for homes and names and addresses of people they have built for recently. And the reason you do it recently is so you can see what technology they're using. And if they've had any financial difficulties, it would probably arise on the most recent home versus one obviously 2 or 3 years ago where they wouldn't be there now. So ask for recent homes and then get permission from the general contractor and the homeowner and ask him to do that for you, or at least I think you should have him set it up because he knows the people you don't, probably don't anyway, to go visit them. Because beauty and quality, to me, are both in the eyes of the beholder. I may see something and I think it's great quality. You may see something and think it's not. But the bottom line is the general contractor has to please you and nobody else. So you go visit one or two of his homes, you talk to the homeowner, and see how the general contractor was to work with. Was he on time? Was he on budget? Was he comfortable with changes? How was he to work with? Because this is not a 1 or 2 week deal. This will be a several month relationship, and you want someone that you can work with and you're comfortable working with, and someone that's open to your ideas. So talk to that other homeowner, and while you're talking to them, get a tour through the home so that you can see the quality of the work that he does. So important. You can see it with your own eyes. And after you've done that with a home or two, then you can decide on your own and that yes, this is the right person, or no, it's not, and be comfortable and confident in that decision. Because if you just rely on other people, then you're relying on someone else's perception and not yours. And also when you're checking them out, ask for some financial references also, and call the banks to make sure they're financially secure so there aren't any liens put on your home or anything like that. Now there's one other person that I'd like to have you hire, and you've probably never heard of this person at all, and it's a certified energy auditor. And you want to hire this person before you start construction, in fact hopefully in the design stages. Because he is going to be a person, the only one probably that you hire, that you're going to get the money back that you paid him probably in a year, no more than 2 or 3 years. And you're going to say, how can you do that? And I'll explain as we go. But what's going to happen here, you're going to hire a certified energy auditor. He's going to get involved with your plans, and he may make some suggestions, even like what we talked about today. Different things that you can do or to change to make your home more energy efficient. And he will work closely with your general contractor. In fact, maybe you want him to hire him, and that's up to you. But he'll work closely with your general contractor. But one thing he should and usually will do is they will put in the contract that you sign with your general contractor that there are specific things that need to be done in that home to make it tight. And if those things are not done, and after the home was tested at the end, if they're not done, it is the responsibility of the general contractor to go back and fix them. And it's written in the contract, so there is no haggling about that after the fact, saying, well, it's not my responsibility because the plumber or the electrician didn't push the insulation back, or whatever the case may be. So you talk to him, and you get it in your contract before you hire him. Now, we talked about him, the energy auditor, testing your home to see if it performs well after it's all built. You say, well, how does he do that? And on the left side of the slide here, there's an infrared camera. It detects and sees heat. And on the right side is a large variable speed fan. So what your energy auditor will do is when the home is all done, he'll come in, and he'll put a fan, like the one you see on the right side of the slide there, in one of your doorways, and he'll seal that fan up with a big piece of plastic and then turn it on so that the fan is sucking air out of the home. So he's creating a vacuum in the home. So as the vacuum is being created now inside the home, air will rush in throughout the home wherever it's not super tight. Now, all homes have air infiltrations. We're not building submarines. No home will be perfectly airtight, and they don't need to be, and we don't want them to be. But they should be sufficiently tight to meet your energy objectives. And so what'll happen after he turns his fan on, your energy auditor will pick up the infrared camera, and he'll walk around shooting every part of every room, and he can see where the air is coming in, and he can see if the home was properly insulated. Now, in this slide that you see in front of you now, you can see the yellow on the left side in a living room, and the red on the right side in a bedroom. These homes are completely finished. They're both done with sheetrock, and the homeowner would never know why his heating bill in the winter and his cooling bill in the summer are way too high, unless he had an energy auditor. He'd just know that they're too high. But you can see, obviously, in both cases, that the fiberglass was left out of the top of the partitions, and they sheetrocked right over it. So there's obviously tremendous heat loss, or heat gain, as the case may be, summer or winter, and it's costing them way too much. And you would never know if you did not have an energy auditor. So that's one of the reasons, one of the many reasons that I strongly suggest that will happen. Now, if you've got a good general contractor, this won't happen, but you'll certainly get peace of mind. And when you're all done, what's going to happen, you're going to receive a home energy rating certificate. And on the left side, it has a HERS rating, HERS index. Left side, the middle, you say this one says 59. And your energy auditor will submit this to the proper state agency, and I think every state in the United States, or almost every state in the United States, and it changes by the year because every state's different and they change just like Maine does. Excuse me, just like Maine does. But they will offer some kind of a good incentive to build a very energy efficient home. And there are some areas that, like in the state of Maine, if depending on your HERS rating, you'll get $2,000 or $3,000 back on your next income tax return. Some of the southern states, you get 10% off your electric rate for the next 3 years or 5 years. There's all kinds of incentives, but basically, in the state of Maine, if someone charges you $800 to do that, which is a common fee for your energy auditor, you get $2,000 back, and you get that back the next year. There's no reason not to have an energy auditor, folks. It just plain isn't. And you'll have peace of mind, and probably a good chance you'll have your home will be a little tighter and warmer just because everybody knows that they're going to be checked. And the results are going to be very obvious when the home is all built. So I hope you get someone like that. In conclusion, energy efficiency log homes are very easy to build. And it's so cheap to do it early and so expensive to do it after the fact that there's no good reason not to do it when you're building your home. If you choose a good general contractor and auditor, you're going to get a wonderfully tight log home. You should get a wonderfully tight, energy efficient log home as long as they pay attention to details. So with that, thank you very much and have a good day.